For this presentation, I'm going to talk about depression. Depression is a mental disease which is going to impact our emotional health. This is a mental disease which is defined as feeling depressed, having suicidal thoughts, lack of interest towards daily activity, lack of appetite, and inability to maintain focus. There are different types of depression. The first one is called unipolar depression. The second one is called biological depression. The third one is called major depression. The fourth one is called dysthymia. The fifth one is called seasonal affective disorder. The sixth one is called postpartum depression. Depression is a contemporary issue which requires our close attention. First, depression is a mental disease that places a high economic burden in the U.S. Americans tend to spend billions of dollars to treat depression each year. Depression is also a mental disease that is the 10th leading cause of death in the U.S. American teenagers also have a high depression rate. According to National Institute of Mental Health, there are 3.2 million teenagers who suffer depression in the U.S. each year. According to National Institute of Mental Health, Americans have a female depression rate which is 10.4%. It is almost twice as much as male, which is 5.5%. If you belong to one of the following groups, you are going to have a high risk for depression. The first group would be female. The second group is adolescents. Also, people that have a substance abuse problem have a high chance to suffer depression. People who live in poverty have a high chance to suffer depression. People who have chronic physical illness have a high chance to suffer depression. People who have a family history for depression tend to have a high chance which they suffer depression. People who do not have any social support have a high chance which they suffer depression. In terms of prevention technique of depression, exercise is a strategy which helps us to prevent suffer depression. When we perform exercise, our body is going to decrease the amount of stress hormone in our body. Stress hormone causes us to have more stress. In the meantime, exercise helps us to produce more endorphins, which makes us feel happy. Listening to music helps us to prevent suffer depression. According to researchers, when we listen to music, our body is going to produce a brainwave, which is called the alpha brainwave. This is a type of brainwave which makes us to feel more relaxed. Another depression prevention technique is avoiding alcohol. Some people think that alcohol helps them to overcome depression. However, abusing alcohol gives both financial and career problems to individuals who suffer depression. This is going to lead to damaged cycle of alcohol abuse, which is going to worsen depression. Having a good diet helps a person to prevent suffer depression. For instance, food that contains antioxidants helps a person to prevent suffer depression. By eating food that contains antioxidants, we are able to eliminate free radicals, which can cause oxidative stress, which is going to lead to depression. Food that contains selenium is able to decrease the chance which we suffer depression. Selenium helps us to reduce anxiety that is going to lead to depression. Food that contains omega-3 fatty acids helps us to reduce the chance which we suffer depression. Omega-3 fatty acids is able to save myelin sheath, which protects our nerve cell. Depression is a mental disease which is controversial. Some people think that microbiotics, which is located in our gut, is able to impact our mental health. They discover that there is a connection between the gut and the human brain. The gut bacteria is able to produce dopamine as well as serotonin. Dopamine does not only help us to maintain focus, but also helps us to find activity that is interesting. Serotonin is a chemical which is considered as a happy hormone. The researcher also discovered that the depression patients do not have two types of microbacteria. The first one is called coprococcus. The second one is called Lister. Another controversial for depression is social media. Social media plays a role on teenager depression. Nowadays, there are a lot of teenagers who spend lots of time on social media. Some of them face a type of bullying which is called cyberbullying. This is a type of bullying which one teens either expose secrets of other teenagers or spread false information in the social media. The cyberbullying is going to destroy the reputation which a teenager have. In the worst circumstances, cyberbullying is able to lead a teenager to commit suicide. Electrical therapy is controversial for depression. This is a therapy which causes seizure to the patients by giving patients electrical currents. Some people think that electrical therapy is able to cause harm to the patients who suffer depression. For instance, some patients who experience electrical therapy tend to have memory loss. In the worst circumstances, the electrical therapy can cause heart problems. For depression treatment, there are 4 common types of treatment for depression. The first is called antidepressants. The second is called cognitive behavioral therapy. The third is called psychodynamic therapy. The fourth is called interpersonal therapy. Antidepressants is a medication which commonly treats depression. Depression is an unregulation for serotonin. Therefore, antidepressants have a common function, which is the regulation of serotonin. Serotonin is a hormone which causes us to feel happy. There are 3 common types of antidepressants. The first type is called serotonin selective reuptake inhibitor. This is a medication which blocks the reuptake of serotonin. By blocking the serotonin reuptake, we are going to have more serotonin in the synapse. The second medication is called serotonin and norepinephrine reuptake inhibitor. This is a medication which helps us to produce more serotonin. The third one is called monoamine oxidase inhibitor. This is a medication which inhibits the action of monoamine oxidase. This is a brain enzyme which breaks down serotonin. Through this action, we are going to have more circulating serotonin. Cognitive behavioral therapy is another common treatment for depression. Cognitive behavioral therapy does not only help the person to identify thinking strategy that is unhelpful, but also helps a person to identify behavior that is unhelpful. In terms of a better thinking strategy, cognitive behavioral therapy gives the patients a skill which is problem-solving skills. This is a skill which helps the patients to cope with difficult situations. In terms of change behavioral pattern, cognitive behavioral therapy gives patients a lesson which helps them to face the fear instead of avoiding fear. Psychodynamic therapy is a therapy which helps depression. Psychodynamic therapy believes in subconsciousness. Psychodynamic therapy has a main goal. It helps the patients to discover a fact, how the past influenced the present behavior. Psychodynamic therapy thinks that the childhood experience is able to place an impact on adult. Within psychodynamic therapy, there are 3 common treatments. The first treatment is called free association. The second treatment is called word association. The third treatment is called dream analysis. Interpersonal therapy is a therapy which treats depression. Interpersonal therapy focuses on the relationship with other people. They believe that psychological problem comes from the personal relationship. This is the may differ from the cognitive behavior therapy, which focus on the past events, not the current events. In terms of the specific treatment method, interpersonal therapists is going to help the depression patients to find events which lead them to suffer depression. Then the therapist is going to give the patients a skill which helps them to direct difficult emotion in a positive ways. There are some alternatives to consider. Some people who suffer depression can reduce the symptom of depression by taking care of a pet. Some people who suffer depression tend to do yoga. They think that yoga helps them to overcome depression. Some people who suffer depression find meditation as a way that helps them to feel more relaxed.